and I'm excited that you decided to join us for this new year, new sock knit along. So the pattern that we're knitting is called My Cup of Tea, and I'll put a link down below. It's a free Ravelry download. It's a cuff down sock with a pretty interesting pattern that's just on the front of the leg. And so the back of the leg's all stockinette stitch, so that will go really quickly, and it's pretty easy to resize depending on how many stitches that you need to cast on. So I'll show you how to do that. All right, so it is important. I'm always going to tell you to do a swatch with your chosen yarn and needle so you have the right combination to create the fabric density that you would like to have for longer, more durable, lasting socks, right? You don't want to knit socks in like a really airy, loopy, too big of a needle. They won't wear well. So I'll put a link down below to my videos recently that I uploaded about swatching and gauge and how to measure all that. So look for that. So after you've done your swatch and you've chosen your correct needles and yarn combination to give you the resulting fabric, then you're going to want to cast on however many stitches that will be for you after you've measured the circumference of your foot, and I like to do my ankle and my leg as well and kind of take an average of those three. So I will also put a link down below to a handy sock calculator. Now the sock calculator helps you determine your cast on stitches, but it does not have I don't think there's any negative ease built in. And negative ease is just usually we subtract off 8 to 10% of the stitches after you do the math of stitches per inch and the circumference. Negative ease just makes it so it hugs your foot a little bit more, hugs your leg. Now doing ribbing is a little more forgiving. So if you wanted to do this pattern with ribbing on the back, you totally could, and that would add a little more forgiveness if you're a new sock knitter or you're unsure about your numbers. Adding some ribbing down the back half of, the back half of your stitches would definitely make those numbers a little more forgiving if you wanted to do that. I'm casting on a whopping 80 stitches, and the reason I'm doing that is because in our family, we are not really good with laundry. So stuff kind of shrinks a little bit sometimes. My daughter has kind of big feet, as do I. But I also, when I swatched with this yarn and needle combination that I'm using, I ended up with 9 1/4 or 9 1/2 stitches per inch. So that's a lot. But that's what I want to create that durable, long-lasting, denser fabric, knitted fabric. So that's what I've decided to do. If you're doing 64 stitches, you can knit the pattern straight up as written. If you're doing 72 or, any multiple of 4, I would suggest a multiple of 4. So I will give you instructions, for how you can sort things out as we go along. Not to worry. All right, if you're doing double pointed needles, I would suggest the front of the leg stitches, the chart is going to be all on 1. Those 24 stitches will be on 1, and then you can use 2 more double points for the back of the leg, or 3 if you do, a set of 4 double points and then the 5th one's your working needle, or you're doing 3 double points and the 4th one's your working needle. However you want to arrange that is totally cool. Now let me talk about the ribbing for a second. I cast on 80 stitches. The reason I am not doing the ribbing as written in the pattern is, while I appreciate the cool texture that ribbing would create and the fact that it works well with the chart, it's difficult to resize. I had a little brain splody over that, and I decided, I'm the boss, right? I'm the boss of my knitting. I'm just going to go with my standard 2x2 ribbing, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, all the way around. And I did that for 20 rows, which created a cuff about 1.5 inches. I'll show you that in a second. The reason I did that is because it was difficult to resize that alternative ribbing. Now, if you want to work that out for yourself and you can sort out how to do that, then kudos. I had a little brain splody over it, and I decided, you know what? It's not worth it. I got frustrated, and so I decided to go with my regular 2x2. So there you go. That's what I did. Okay, I'm starting with a regular old slip knot, and we're doing the long tail cast on. If you need some help learning to do that, or you need a slower version of this, then I'll put a link down below for another video in my knitting basics playlist that shows more slowly how you would do the long tail cast on. As with anything, there's lots of variations and ways to go about this. I find this the easiest way to begin most every knitting project. Of course, there's exceptions to that, but it definitely serves me well. for being a relatively stretchy cast on. Now, if you find yourself, if you're a newer knitter and you find yourself casting on really tightly, then another little tidbit would be to cast on a thicker needle and then switch back to your regular sock knitting needles after that. If you find your cast on to be super tight, then I would suggest doing that and casting on with a larger size. So I'm just going to carry on with this. I'm using a size 2.25 millimeter needle in a 40-inch circular, and I'll be magic looping. I've moved all of my stitches to the middle of my circular needle. Now I'm pinching this and I'm holding my place because I've counted half my stitches to get to the center, and now I'm just gently pinching this in the halfway point because I want to have half my stitches on each side. So I'm gently pinching that and I'm going to move it down. And now I've got half my stitches on each. I have them separated. That's what I'm trying to say. And so I always double and triple count my cast on, because if you're wrong right from the get-go, then that's causing a bunch of frogging and discontent, and we don't want that. So double count your cast on. I usually count it the first time, then I split it in half, and then I count it again. You'll save yourself heartache if you try to remember to do that. And I have my stitches arranged so that the cast on edge is on the inside, it's facing each other. Here's my working yarn and here's my tail. And so this is how I arrange things. And all I do to join in the round, and every pattern says join in the round, be careful not to twist. So all that means is that you want everything straight and you want your edges facing each other and nothing is twisted. So what I like to do is I take the tail and I lay it up over here on the side, and I'm going to take this needle that has the working yarn in the tail, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that all the way through, and I'm going to loop around, right? Hence the magic loop. I have a loop on the right and a loop on the left. So it creates a big figure 8. And then what I like to do to join in the round is I just go in this first stitch as if to purl, and I take the tail of my yarn and I lay that over there, and I basically draw that through. And then I tie a square knot. And I know there are many, many ways to join in the round, and I know this is not the most elegant or the most refined way to do it, but these are socks, and they're for my daughter, and we live on a farm, and things need to be durable. So this is the way I'm doing it. And it is somewhat awkward to try to tie this one-handed, pretty much, while I'm pinching it together. But, we'll get her done. Then I'm going to start my ribbing. So I'm just doing my standard 2x2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, all the way around until it's, probably about 1.5 inches. Okay, I've done my 2x2 ribbing for 20 rows, or it's about 1.5 inches, and so I like the size of that. So now I'm ready to move on to the chart. So I have my stitches divided, half on the front needle, half on the back needle. I've cast on more than the pattern recommended because of the number of stitches per inch I have and the size of sock that I'm making. I'm going to use the chart, but the chart, if you notice, is it's only 24 stitches across the center. So I'm going to have the chart. Let me zoom out here so I can show you this. These 24 stitches I want centered on the front of the leg of my sock. So in order to do that, I need to center that. So I need to take my total number of stitches on this front portion of my sock. So for me, that's 40. If you are doing 32, because you cast on 64, then you're going to have 32 stitches across here. And you have 24 stitches on the chart. So if you're cast on 64, you have a total of 32 stitches on your front half. You can either just have these 24 stitches on your front double pointed needle as recommended in the pattern, but if you're doing magic loop, then you'll still have your 32 stitches on your half, that is the front of your leg of your sock. So you would take 32 minus 24, and that gives you a balance of 8 stitches. So you're going to have 4 stitches on each side to center that motif on the front of the leg. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is knit 4. I'm not doing any more ribbing, so you're just going to knit 4 and place a marker. Okay, so what I did, though, one thing I need to back up and tell you is that after the ribbing, I just knitted 1 plain round, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So after the ribbing, knit 1 plain round, and then knit 4 and start the chart. So for me, I'm going to knit 8 and start the chart because I cast on 80 stitches. So if I have 40 on the front of my leg minus the 24 for this, that's a difference of 16. So I'm going to have 8 on this side and 8 on this side and my chart in the middle. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Let me show you on the one I've already started. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so I have the side stitches here, my chart in the middle, the side stitches here. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So as I said, I knitted one plain round after the ribbing to make it easier to begin with the lifted increases that I'm going to show you and the decreases. So now I'm going to place my marker. So if you have side stitches on there that are plain, framing your chart in the middle, then it's helpful to put a marker here so that you know after the marker is where you're going to begin this chart. All right, now when we knit a chart, we begin stitch 1, row 1 on the bottom right hand corner of the chart, and we read across from right to left in the same way that you knit across your needle from right to left. Okay, so I'll put a link to a video down below that goes in more depth on how to knit a chart. But here we want to make one. Now you can make one the way she suggests in the pattern. I'm going to choose to do a left leaning increase because this whole side of my chart is leaning to the left, as you can tell by my decreases here and the direction in which those are going to be leaning. So I'm going to make a left leaning increase, lifted increase, right there where it says make one. So that's a little tricky to do around a marker, but I want to do it here. So that denotes the beginning of my chart is the marker. And so you can see that when I lift that leg, that that's orientated the wrong way. So I need to knit into the back of that so that I'm positioning that stitch correctly on the right hand needle. All right. And then I'm going to, right away, the pattern has me doing a slip, slip, knit. So I'm going to slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, go in underneath and knit those two together. Then I'm going to knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I want to do a knit 2 together. Just going to knit those 2 together like normal, and then knit 3 plain, and that brings me up to that center column, and that's going to be a make one to the right, so a right leaning lifted increase here. So I go in underneath that leg there on the right side of the stitch in the row below. I lift that up and put it on my left needle and just knit straight into that. Okay, so there's the make one. And then knit 2, 1, 2, make another one. Now this one I want it to be a left leaning. So I'm going to go down under here, lift this up, knit into the back of it. Okay, so there's that one. And then I knit 3 plain ones according to following along with my chart. All right. Slip, slip, knit so that I have a decrease that's leaning to the left. Following along here. Okay. What's next here? Knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, knit 2 together, and then I'm going to do my make one, which will be my final increase for this chart. Make one, and I want it to lean to the right, so I'm going to just lift that leg up from the row below. Okay, now here, that last increase, that was my make one right here at the end of my chart. So I am choosing to go ahead and put another marker right there, and then I should have 8 stitches left, and I do. And then I'm on to the back of the leg, and that's just straight stockinette stitch, right? So that's easy. Now if you're doing magic loop with me, you have, like I mentioned earlier, you have your stitches divided in half, where you have the front of the leg and you have the back of the leg. If you're using double pointed needles, you can either have things split in half if you're using 4 DPNs, or maybe you're doing it like it's written where you're dividing things in third. If you're doing DPNs, you could just have these 24 stitches on your front of the leg needle and then have your other 2 needles or 3 divide it however you like as you go around, because the back of the leg is just straight up. You can see in the pictures here, it's just straight up stockinette stitch. And what's cool here is every other row of your chart is straight stockinette stitch, or like a resting row. So now I just tend to use a post-it note. Okay, now I know I've completed that one. So my row 2 is just straight stockinette, and I'm going to go round and round. Now just be careful on your chart that you keep track of where you are. You can use a row counter, you can use a post-it note, whatever you need to do. As I mentioned earlier, I will put all the links for these basic functions. I'll put all the links for slower, more in-depth tutorials on how to perform those increases and decreases down in the video description below. So as you get going on this, this is how it's going to look. It's going to start emerging in this way. Isn't that pretty? That's super cool. All right. So what you're going to want to do until we see each other next time is knit your ribbing and go ahead and knit through the leg, however tall you want it to be and however much yarn you have. Now, if you are a large-footed person like me, you may choose to knit contrasting heels and toes to make sure that you have enough yarn. Okay, that's like a coffee stain or, well, water stain or something. Sorry about that. Okay, so happy knitting this week. I'm excited y'all have decided to join me. So carry on with the leg, and next time we'll talk about the heel flap, the heel turn, and picking up the gusset. So as always, if you have any questions, drop me a comment down below. Be sure to participate in the Facebook and or the Ravelry group. I'll put those links are down below as well. So happy knitting, you guys. Happy New Year, and I hope you're having a wonderful winter wherever you are.